empowering you to build better lives. That's what we do. Hello, welcome to today's podcast, Empower. We're here with Trevor Farnes. I'm so excited, Trevor, to be sitting down with you today. Since you and I first met a couple months ago at a live event where you and your wife, your family came to participate. I've just been impressed with you. I started following you on social media. One of our key leaders knows you, Kenton Worthington, and Kenton told me 2 years ago, Ryan, you've got to get connected with Trevor and Mountain Ops and the company you've started. I bought a bunch of your gear. I have all kinds of gear. I have your pre-workout that I use, so there's a bunch of stuff that I've known about you, but
awesome.
Just look forward to sitting down and chatting. So
it's a privilege for me.
Thanks for being here.
Thanks for the invitation. This is great.
You drove all the way down. It's 60 miles?
Yeah, not too far. So, it was an hour to get here. I live up in Farmington, so not bad at all.
You're close. So we want to just dive into this, Trevor, and where we started, and Kathy broke the conversation, was just about your life story and who matters to you. And we started right into a little discussion. Obviously, podcast people know I broke my neck in a ski accident. You talked about, I have a lot of friends there, and even your father who inspired you to start Mountain Ops. And would just love to get an understanding of who you are by the man who made you, and maybe tell us a little bit about your dad. And
we were just talking, and then I've got a lot of friends that have had accidents similar to yours. They've ended up in wheelchairs, and they've devoted their lives to training people and to delivering wheelchairs around the world. And in fact, one of the guys, a friend named Chad Hymas, that I met the day my dad passed away, actually, and I picked him up out of a wheelchair, put him in my truck. We drove around his ranch, and it was just kind of this timing where unsure of what I was supposed to be learning from this man that was in this wheelchair, and he had severed his spinal cord 95%, and he told me this whole story, and I drove home that night and got a call from my brother just a few hours later that my dad had just had a fall and fell down their stairs, was going out to the kitchen to get a drink or something that night, and didn't turn the lights on, I think had a misstep, and my mom heard a thud and found him at the bottom of the stairs, and he had broken his neck, and it was severed 100%, his spinal cord. So this was super tragic for our family. Honestly, the first death in my immediate family, and didn't expect for it to come this way. It was, just sudden, abrupt, and very tragic for my mother to find him that way, because his body was a bit contorted, and they got him resuscitated. In fact, the company that we started it for my dad, for his heart. That he was the mission. He was kind of my reason why, and the product that I created was for him. And he saw some incredible improvement with his heart health, and his cardiologist told him, whatever your son's giving you, just keep taking. He was supposed to have open heart surgery, never had to have it. And but they resuscitated him, and the doctors were saying his heart's incredibly strong, but he just can't survive this break. And so when you were sharing your story, it's just been a year, so it's still a little raw. Yesterday was my 43rd birthday, and my mom sent me home with a gift. She went to dinner with us, and I opened up this gift, and it was some of his clothes. And it was a Mountain Ops shirt that he wore the last time I saw him, but he wore it all the time. It was this black shirt with a big orange mark.
Yeah, I've seen it.
And you've seen it.
Yeah,
pictures
love
and stuff. We had a family photo once, and everyone came dressed with collared shirts. I'm always in T-shirts and such, but I wore a collared shirt. I buttoned up. I looked good for the family photo. And there's my dad in the middle of it with his bright orange Mountain Ops logo. Yeah. But he was so proud. He was proud that the product was created for him, but he was also proud about, what we were doing in the community to feed hungry children and families. And so every time he wore that, he's like, Trev, look. And so a few days before he passed, he was wearing that shirt. He came to my house. He got out of his car just to show me, so I took a picture of him. And that's the shirt my mom gave me. I've got to frame it and put it up in my office. But he was just so proud to wear it, and so he was my inspiration. But there's still that inspiration from him today. I'm encouraged by him all the time. I see signs of him in the life that we're living, and encouragement from him that just to push this mission forward. And but that's kind of he's the man that caused me to start this, and I've learned so much throughout my life from him and my mother, and the principles and core values they taught in our home as we grew up, and that's what I wrote about in here, and the values and principles that we base our business on at Mountain Ops, it's what I was taught growing up. And it, you know, so when we started a business, it wasn't like what should we be now? It was like what have we been taught to be?
Yeah,
these are the core values that we'll establish, and they are our guardrails. They are decision making factors that point us towards our mission.
Yeah.
So I'm grateful.
You know, you said, and all the way through your book, by the way, Conquer Code, this is it. If you haven't read it, if you don't have it, you got to pick it up. And I know this has been a major work for you. We're going to dive into this in a little bit, but before we get there, you used, as we were talking about this, you know, whether it's my situation, your father wasn't as fortunate. You used the word miracle, and that's a miracle. And I know you're a man of faith. And you see that throughout your whole life. And I mean, it's so pervasive on social media, your book, and we'll talk more about that. But this idea of miracles and grace in our lives, I think is such a powerful concept. And that was something, you know, when my neck broke, I told you it was a jump on the Peloton, 90 days. I had 90 days with the neck brace on. I can't do anything else. I'll do that. And I'll help my buddy train up for a triathlon, at least the biking section of that. But I still, to this day, right, it's every morning, it's a prayer of gratitude for movement, because I know it's such a blessing to move. And I know your whole business has been built around Mountain Ops. Yeah. It's central fitness and all of that. And so I kind of want to get into, as we go, your book touches on it, it's kind of the spiritual and the physical and how you see that playing together, because I think that's a big part of what you are about. So we're going to get into that as well. So as we go, so maybe some background so we connect this. Most of our listeners have some connection with Nu Skin, and I want to kind of get into that because that was when we first met, and I heard an amazing story about you, that you got involved in the business. I won't tell your story for you, but that you got involved in the Nu Skin business, that you're pretty entrepreneurial guy, always looking for new things, new angles, and you didn't see success that you wanted. And even at one point I heard that, and again, kind of looking into your background, you almost felt a failure at what point. When I look at you where you are today, it is very clear every single setback has been a catapult for you going somewhere else. So let's get into your story, and then I want to kind of get into these points of where you failed and how that catapulted you forward. And I think it's going to get into some of the book and the chapters too, because it's a good read on that.
Yeah, it will, because you talk about miracles, and sometimes you see the miracle as like, oh, and everything was okay. But what if the miracle is that it wasn't okay, and I was supposed to learn from it, and it pointed me in the direction I was supposed to go. And so now I'm most powerfully positioned to serve somebody who I once was, who was in the shoes I was once in. And there's a miracle in that we're given eyes to see, a heart to feel, a mind to think a little differently than we did in the past. And, you know, my dad didn't come out of his accident the way that you did, but I also see there's a wise, in my scriptures I was reading after this, and there's a scripture that says, I do this for a wise purpose. So sometimes the miracle is finding out what the wise purpose to a tragedy or to a setback may be, and how it can catapult you forward, or it can be a guiding post instead of a hitching post. Let it be a guiding post and force in your life. And so, back in 2010, I was like at rock bottom at that point when I met Nu Skin, when I met Kenton Worthington and Nathan Ricks. But they didn't necessarily know how bad I was at the time. I had jumped from a few different businesses trying to find my way. I'd invested in real estate in 2007 after my wife and I had saved up a bunch of money. I mean, we were selling, after I got home from my mission, started selling pharmaceuticals for my brothers, putting my commission away, all with this attempt to start a business to succeed in, and this and that. And we put a bunch into real estate. And 2008 comes around.
Good timing.
Awesome timing to learn the ropes of real estate, right? Horrible.
Well, it was. It turned out to be a great time to learn.
Yeah, to learn.
not to make money.
And then we also bought into a franchise at that time and invested most of our cash into that. And the franchise, instead of buying one, we bought 7. And all in.
Let's do it.
We were all
Let's go.
And we were ambitious. We were young, naive, kind of dumb. Sure. We should have scaled. We should have tested it and then scaled from there. But we went all in. And within about 4 months of having those stores up and running, we were shut down. The franchisor was shut down. And I don't get into the details of that. It's not my place to like point the finger. I don't want to call any attention to someone, but some things that were out of our control happened. And we had to put those stores on hold. We had furnished all those stores, bought inventory for those stores, hired 7 friends to run those stores. Yeah. And my wife and I signed personal 5-year guarantees for each of those stores. So every month we had $5 to $7 grand going into just rental payments for each of those locations. And I was 26 years old. This was really hard. I was now gaining another education of working capital, cash flow, and I didn't have any. So all of a sudden we were just struggling. So I was looking for something new. This is now 2010. I was creating a product for my dad because he was almost had a heart attack. They caught him just right in time, put some stents in his heart, and he was starting to see a little bit of results from the stents, but he couldn't feel his fingers and toes. He had horrible neuropathy, bad blood pressure, and I wanted to help him, but I didn't have any resource to do that. And I actually picked up a book called No More Heart Disease. It was Luis Ignarro won the Nobel Prize in 1998, and I studied that, took it to a chemist, said, hey, can you help me with the product formulation for my dad? And right during that time, I met Kenton Worthington. And I went to Kenton's house, and we just connected. Something was like, there was just this positive energy, and I could see the success he was having. I felt good around him. And I went to the convention that year, and I think it was in October. I can't remember this time frame.
Yeah, should have been.
And I showed up at the Salt Palace, and him and Nathan Ricks come walking out, and there's kind of this entourage. And this was the time Kenton's hair, he's always got this style in this brand, but it was like bigger back then, you know, this faux hawk that was going. And there was lines of people that talked to this guy, and I was like, who in the world is this guy? Like, what's going on? But I sat down with them both that night and said, look, I can't even pay the $1,200 to buy in on this. Like, this is really hard for me, but I want to come and learn from you guys. If I get to be mentored by 2 individuals that are crushing it in this business and kind of at the top of their game, and they guaranteed me a payment. They guaranteed. They said, we'll help you. We'll help you build. And so I thought, this is incredible. If I can get their support, and I still wasn't sure. Is this the business for me? So I sat in the back of that expo hall, the whole conference for a few days, sitting on the back row the whole time. Just sitting and watching all this, and I was like having some inner turmoil. I didn't know if the business was for me. I was creating this product for my dad. Should I go after this? I don't have the resource. I've got these 2 guys that are willing to help me, mentor me. And I actually took my dad to meet with Nathan Ricks one day, and I said, I'm still trying to decide on whether to do this. And Nathan said, are you willing to serve people? And I said, yeah, that's what I want to do. And he said, this is all about service. So if you're willing to serve people and just take care of others before yourself, then you can make it. But I need you to commit to serving others. And I said, that's exactly what I'm looking for. But I still had this like this gut feeling like I've got to help my dad. After a month of kind of trying to do this business and everything, I decided I've got to help my dad. That's where the mission is calling me. But during that expo at the Live with New Skin, I learned about Nourish the Children. And my family, right at that point, we were going through our own hunger crisis. We couldn't feed our own.
You didn't have extra money.
We didn't have extra money. It was there was food assistance given to us. There was people dropping groceries off at our doorstep. We had lost everything. Our house was up for auction. One of our daughters ended up in the hospital with some kidney and liver issues at that time. She was deemed uninsurable with a mishap from insurance going from employed to self-employed. So we had all these medical bills. We had the mortgage. We couldn't pay for our cars. And we were just in a miserable situation. All right at that time when I was like discovering
New Skin. Like early 30s, right? Or late 20s?
Yeah, late 20s. At this point, I'm probably 30 years old.
Okay.
And because this was 14 years ago. So 29. And just turned 43 yesterday. So I sat there in the back of the room and I heard Nourish the Children. And I remember going home and telling my wife, I want to build a business that feeds children. And I don't know how we're going to do this. But we don't have it right now, but let's put forward $22. It's going to be a sacrifice that we make, and that will buy a bag of vitamin in Malawi, Africa.
30 mils.
And so that's what we did. And at that point in 2010, we started an auto ship. And we couldn't afford the product, but we put forth the $22. My wife and I look at that, and we're a faith-based family, and we look at the stories of Jesus, and the miracles where there was food involved were always a big thing for me at that time. Food was kind of the topic of conversation. And so there was a young lad that brought some loaves and some fishes to the Savior, and they were multiplied. And I had this young lady next to this young lad, and we said, let's take the $22. That was our loaves. Those were our fishes. and let's see if we can multiply them. And as we build, we'll find ways to multiply that. Yeah. And so we got into nutrition, and I built a business around my father's heart health. We started selling through doctors' offices. And then Kenton actually would, anytime I'd make a donation, he would match it. And he'd say, hey, I match up to this amount. And I was like, are you serious? So I was like, I got to get to that amount where he'll match. And I came in here to New Skin a few times, met with some of your team, and just said, hey, I want to build something around this. I'm not necessarily building New Skin, but Kenton Worthington inspired some hope and confidence in me when I felt like a failure. And so Ken's always been one of those where I've gone back to. We hadn't seen each other in a long time, and 2 years ago we ran into each other at an event, and there was just tears. And he had no idea we had now donated 5 million meals through our Operation Conquer Hunger. And I let him know, man, it was just, sometimes all it takes is one person believing in you. Yeah. And at that point in my life, I had a lot of people, but there was something that Kenton inspired in me and then presented to me at New Skin with Nourish the Children, where I was like, this is what I'm going to dedicate my life to. Whatever I build, it's going to be funneled into feeding children and families.
Well, and we have to tell you, because I mean, as you know, right, we're approaching 1 billion meals, 850 million meals, 120,000 kids fed every day, Nourish the Children, because of you, because of people like you, because of your influence. We had our live event, and this is just how good plays forward and is paid forward, right? Is fast forward 14 years. I run into you just before, I think it was Benson Boone was coming, right? And somebody told me, and you were the largest donor to the Force for Good that weekend. And not only that, Mountain Ops partnered up with New Skin, and we set a Guinness World Record for the most number of meals packed in a single 24-hour period, together with the Utah Jazz. And the good that you continue to do is just unbelievable. And I love this idea that you're building upon, frankly, a really challenging period of your life, and just using, with faith, moving forward, and utilizing that to build now what you have today. Yeah. And that's been like truly inspiring. We had you up on stage in as you said, in a totally different capacity than probably you ever thought you would have been on stage to do, but it was because of your generosity.
Yeah, that was a full circle moment for me and my family, to be honest with you, because 14 years later we're sitting, and we didn't know. We were just asked to be there for this concert. You guys surprised us, and 14 years, earlier I was in the back row. This 14 years later, I'm sitting on the front row, and I got a major compliment at that, by the way. You came walking out on the stage, and somebody behind said, "Is that your brother?" And I was like, "He's good looking and fit and everything." Like, that's my brother.
I'll take that one.
And I said, "No, we just met like a few minutes ago, but I'll claim him." And had no idea you guys were gonna mention anything about us. We were just like, "Wow, this is so cool." My wife and I were like pinching each other, like, "Can you believe we're back here?" And we just contributed I think it was $100,000 that Mountain Ops donated for the food for that event. But, at the time when we started with $22, we never dreamt that a boat would come in full. So we thought, let's not wait till that day comes, because we don't know. So let's just start where we can. And it multiplied.
I got to do the math on this. Sorry, I'm doing the math on this. If we do this, is that... so I'm trying to think here on the number of meals times 30. So that's almost 140,000 meals on that single donation, right? I mean, that's amazing. You said you're up to 5 million meals.
We're up to 7 million now. So at the event with you guys, we did 550,000 together. So that took us and then in the last since then, it's been a few months. We've done another 500,000 meals. Nothing like like the billion that you guys are going towards. But it's every effort counts, and there is this need out there, and my family wasn't starving, but we were hungry. And there was such a wise purpose in God giving us that opportunity to experience that, knowing that we would do something with it. And that's the choice that we all have to make. We all have these perspective moments in life where we can either take them and utilize them, or we can let them pass us by.
Well, it's the principle, Tony Robbins talks always about life happening for you, not to you, right? And this point you're making of these really difficult circumstances, your father passing. Like I look at that and I think how proud your dad will be of you for what you do with his death. It's still coming. You know what I mean? But it's hard for us when we're in those moments of despair to say, what am I supposed to learn from this, and how do I take this thing and make it something.
Yeah.
And I think to your point, most of us, we don't. It's hard to see it's the movie Collateral Beauty. I've mentioned this a few times, that idea that in every catastrophe there's collateral beauty if we choose to look for it.
Yeah.
And that is a powerful, to me, not only a powerful way to get through the challenges, but a powerful way to frankly reset when that negative thing happens, right?
100%.
And so as you went into that, so thinking, fast forward, take us through Mountain Ops. How did so you kind of left, hey, Nu Skin's not for me. I'm devoted to my dad's mission and my mission now of helping my dad. And how have you built the company you're in now, Mountain Ops? And what's the mission? What are you all about now?
No, that's awesome. And I don't share my story to say those of you that are in Nu Skin to go do something different. I would say stick with the power of this community, right?
Do what makes what propels you forward as well.
But I would also say, and I've talked to Kenton about this, you never know those that you're talking to how you might influence them in their life, whether they're in Nu Skin or they're partnered with Nu Skin or they're doing something else. Like those individuals that are representing this Nu Skin brand, they're special to me because they changed my life. Kenton Worthington set me in a direction to do something that I wanted to do, but I wasn't sure exactly how to do it. And you guys gave me an opportunity, a channel and a path to do that. And so,
well, I do wish you would have joined today, because today it's literally zero cost to get going, and the vast majority of the people that get into our business today, they simply just buy a product that they love and then they go share it on social media and they start the business.
It was a little different back then.
It's a totally different business. But the other point, before we get too far away from Nathan, because I do want to also acknowledge your point about Nathan Ricks and his point about service. I think the best leaders, not in Nu Skin, everywhere, but Nu Skin in particular, the model itself, that principle of service, I think, is absolutely foundational to Nathan's success, to success in this business, and I think success in life. I mean, we can all selfishly pursue life, but the aggregate value of serving in every way, I think, to me, it just changes our motives and our motivation. I think Nathan only left out the other part is, do you want to serve people and work really hard? Because that's the other half of the equation that I think a lot of people just don't realize is success is hard. Determination is hard. Persistence is hard. And I know when I look at Mountain Ops and I look at your workouts, I look at your, like, it's hard, right? I mean, you kind of have built this whole conquer code around the principle of, you got to conquer some stuff. And most people want success without acknowledging, including myself. Like, none of us want to work as hard as we have to work, but success is hard.
It's hard. And I think people, there's the quote that I love, it's win the wait, or just a saying, win the wait. And people think, okay, I've just got to be patient. I've got to wait for things to happen. I want them to happen in this timeline. No, it's not about sitting around. It's about action. It's about hard work, and it's about service. And a scripture that goes along with that is that they that wait upon the Lord will have their strength renewed. They will run and not be weary, walk and not faint. We all want strength renewed. We all want that energy to keep going and that movement in life. But it comes if you consider the Savior sitting at our table and we are waiting upon him. They that wait upon the Lord, you're serving him. And he says, inasmuch as you've done it unto one of the least of these, my brethren, you've done it unto me. So how do we do that? How do we win the wait in life? We serve others. And by doing that, we serve him and we get that strength renewed. And so that's what happened for me and my wife. It was like, we can't just sit around and wait. Let's put some resource to work, very minimal resource. Let's put our energy and heart and soul into something. And having it be my dad, it meant everything to me. If it was just something ambiguous and this and that, it was like, no, but I could sink my teeth into it and I could endure. I could win the wait that I had to go through because I was doing something for my dad. So we created a product. My dad started to see some benefits. The tingling sensation, his fingers and toes started coming back after a few days. So we knew we were onto something.
Was it a circulation product?
It was a circulation. Nitric oxide, arginine, citrulline combination. And then, I thought I'd be an online sensation overnight. It's so difficult to compete online with supplements. And
turned out it was hard.
It's hard. There's not a lot of loyalty in supplements online. People, it's fragmented. People are jumping from one thing to the next. And so my first order came through our site a few days later, and it was actually a chiropractor. And I thought, why is he ordering this? So without him knowing this, he was the first order. I called him up and said, hey, thank you for the order. Why are you ordering from me? You know, and found out why he was ordering. It was for patients with neuropathy, with blood pressure. And so I thought, okay, I'm just going to focus my efforts here. I'm going to go after chiropractic. I'm going to talk to some cardiologists, some physical therapists. And I started to build a business slowly but surely, and it was growing. You know, nothing crazy, nothing big. And I called it Phoenix Nutrition because I was at a point in my life where I needed to rise from the ashes. I was burnt down.
You couldn't go any lower.
I couldn't go any lower. And my dad at the same time with his health was like, he was ready to rise from the ashes. So he was my inspiration. The product was working. We knew we were onto something. And then about 4 years into that, just slow, steady growth, I was really looking for what's a consumer base I could take this product to. I'd created another 5 or 6 products. Wanted to get out to the consumers and get more volume going, and I was meeting with some guys that were doing a lot of marketing in the hunting industry. I was not a hunter. I ski, I mountain bike, that type of thing, but never grew up hunting. And I said, is there a place for products in hunt and in the outdoors like this? And their eyes just went wide, and there was a big hunter athlete movement with brands like Under Armour, Yeti, Sitka at that time. But there wasn't really a consumable product leading the way, and so we jumped in with the right brand, with the right product at the right time, and that was just this recipe.
So
for
that
success.
was the birth of Mountain Ops.
That was the birth of Mountain Ops.
Okay, so you transferred from Phoenix to Mountain Ops.
Yeah, and I kept Phoenix going, hired somebody to run that, and then I jumped full force over here. And I was just excited about fueling this passion that these outdoorsmen had for what they did in the outdoors. It was what they talked about, dreamt about.
It's like hunters. I'm not a hunter either, but it almost makes me want to be one.
Oh, and I jumped into it after after the first year. I was like, I can't just fuel this. I've got to understand it. I've traveled all around the world with my family now and experienced some incredible adventures. But the thing that intrigued me most right out the gates was I can bring food home to my family by going out on the mountain. I can go and bring
self-sustained,
home
right?
Self-sustained. I was looking for that, and so that's how I approached it. And the connection that you get when you're out on the mountains, you're disconnected from the world, and you're with your friends and your family, and in God's creation, and those creations are pointing you to God. It's pretty
away
amazing.
from social media, away from all that, right?
And so I love that. I love the mentality of this community we had started to sell through, and 70% of them buying from us had never had supplements before because they weren't shopping at GNC. They weren't working out at Gold's Gym. They were up in God's Gym. They just, nobody was speaking their language. And so in marketing, it's so important to find a language you can speak authentically to, and my partners could. I eventually could. I could speak to the product. And then you build a community around that, especially if this community's been underserved. And that's where we attach. But for me,
that is, by the way, so this is something I talk about all the time with leaders or people coming into the business is so I'm a marketing major, right? Market segmentation is probably the least understood principle in all of business to me today. When you talk about identifying a target market that's underserved, hunters, who would have ever thought if we identified a consumer brand to a bunch of guys who have never used supplements? I mean, they use them, but just not in this sport. That it would be the right target market to go after. And I think about this all the time in our business. It's a micro-entrepreneurial business, right? It's like my target market or David's target market or Blanca's target market is exactly their target market. And they can define that precisely for them.
That's so cool.
And it's like, the more we can understand it. So I love the story that you're telling. I didn't actually realize that. I first became familiar with Mountain Ops because I'm a big Al's Sporting Goods. I'm putting a plug in for Al's.
They're amazing.
The VIP membership, which you just have to give them your phone number. You get 20-30% off everything. But I went in there and I bought a bunch of stuff and I ended up with a Mountain Ops t-shirt.
Cool.
And I wore it just because I liked it. And then I got the hat with the black logo and I started wearing that around. Guys started asking about. So just the branding itself.
That's interesting.
Across, it just extended. And so anyways, but I want to point at that marketing principle out of you identified a market that nobody else would have ever thought was an opportunity. Frankly, we do supplements. We've never in our life, in 30 years of being in this business, I've never heard anyone say we should create a supplement slide for hunters. Like that would be really big. Bow hunting would be a huge market. And if they did, I promise I would have said, absolutely not.
Yeah.
It's not worth it. And you've gone in and just capitalized on a huge opportunity.
Nobody had, and people are trying to. They're nipping at our heels, but they haven't figured out how to speak exactly how we have done it. You know, so it just was very authentic. We spoke to it, we lived it, we we feel it, we became it. And then branding is so important. And if we would have come out and said hunting supplements, nobody would have worn that on their shirt. Not a lot of people wear their supplement brands shirts or hats, you know. But Mountain Ops, it's different. Ops actually stands for Outdoor Performance Supplements, and the mountain, it's what we play in. But it's this analogy of life. And the mountains we climb, the summits where sometimes it's difficult mountains and challenges we're facing. And our mantra is all about conquering more, and not just physical. Because so many people, especially in supplementation, they go to the body, and it's this vanity play. It's this I got to look good, and everyone wants to look good, feel good. But for us, the wellness is encompassed in physical, spiritual, mental, social. And so that's the realms of what we play in Mountain Ops. That's what we preach. That's what we practice. And that's what we live. We have our own internal challenge that it encompasses those 4 core quadrants with a core value in the middle. And so it was this brand that people, like 15% of our sales is apparel. And that's unheard of for a supplement brand. You know, we don't want it to go much bigger than that because the bread and butter is supplementation. But people wear it, and they know there's a connection when they see somebody else with it, and that connection comes down to core values and mission, to be honest with you.
For sure. Well, and it's funny that you say that because everyone else pays for billboards. Your customers are wearing your billboard around.
To be a billboard for us.
And by the way, we have this Mind, Body, Spirit Business, MBSB group that we're just starting to get going. So we need to do some stuff together because you're already doing it. And I want to get into because I want to get into your book. One of the contributors of your book is Rich Froning. And you talk about the physical and the mental coming together. And Rich wrote, what was his first book after he won like the 4th CrossFit Games? Anyways, in that book, he talks about this idea of I want to be as fit as I can be to do anything that I need to go do. Right? Like that's the goal of fitness, right? Is when you say the vanity play versus the whatever. And then listen, any movement's good movement, you know, in terms of health and that. But I love the idea that Rich talked about in that book. And for those that don't know, Froning, he's just phenomenal. And I know he does some of your
world
stuff.
Champion,
unbelievable competitor.
Fittest man on earth. But I just hunted elk with him a few months ago.
Huge hunter.
Incredible,
And but that principle of being physically in the form to be able to go do anything you want to go do and need to go do is, I think, that idea of self-sustaining. It's a big part of it. So you've built Mountain Ops out. You have a platform that you've taken more. You said that Mountain Ops and that Ops Mountains and then Ops OPS. How intentional was that from the beginning, and how much has evolved through your journey? Like, were you like, no, we want Mountain Ops because that stands for supplements, and we're going to build it this way, and it's going to be a bigger movement, or has it been more like evolutionary? We started with this product, and it's now become a movement.
There's intentionality for sure, but then it's definitely evolved. It's built upon itself. But the Mountain Ops, that was definitely what we were trying to do, is create a brand that people would want to wear. They would pay to be the billboard. It would be a brand that would mean something. And so what did it mean? It had to be built with some mission. And so we started out right out the gates with our mission is to improve the lives of individuals and families in everything that we do. And what will it take us to get there? Well, in previous businesses with my brothers and with Phoenix Nutrition, I had established a set of 12 core values, one for every month. And I just said, I'm starting a new business. That does not mean I create new core values. I am who I am wherever I am. If I'm at home, if I'm at church, if I'm at work, if I'm in this business, if I'm in this business, this is who I am. That's the brand. People wear the mark of Mountain Ops because it looks cool and this and that. But when they dive behind the curtain, when they look behind the mark, they see something much more than just a supplement brand or a shirt. They find.
And by the way, that's why they wear stuff.
Why they wear it.
It's not, I mean, it's a cool logo, but then it means something,
in fact, we paid $50,000 2 years ago with a company called Mindsight. They do research studies on supplement companies, attitude and usage. They got 3,000 people involved in the study. They had to have been taking a supplement like ours over the last 6 months, participating in outdoor activities, mountain biking, hiking, hunting, all those things. And so this was like our audience or future audience. And they came back, and this Mindsight company said, we're seeing something we've never seen with the supplement brand. Your headliner is you're a brand people trust. And that was incredible for us.
Yeah, especially in
Supplement
supplements.
brands are not trusted. There's so many,
supplements.
label, and this and
yeah.
that. But then they said, you've got to look at the mile-long spreadsheet that shows why. And it had everything to do with the core values we had aligned our lives with.
I think that's
and so they said, we see them doing this in the community with Conquer Hunger. We see them recognizing God. Our number one core value at Mountain Ops is recognizing God. We strive to acknowledge his hand in all things. That's what it says. That's what it states. And people ask, how do you do that in a workplace setting? Well, sometimes we do have a prayer before our meetings. Every Tuesday morning we have a team prayer. But more than anything, in my opinion, has nothing to do with religion. I'm a religious guy. I have my faith. And Mountain Ops, there's plenty of people that are just like me, but there's a lot that are diverse and they have their own beliefs. But one way to do that is you recognize the good in individuals, you recognize God.
For sure.
And so if you can take the good and the talents and abilities that each of these individuals have, and you can put it into the right place in life and in the organization and utilize that, I believe you're recognizing God.
Yeah.
So much of
you
business,
say that God is good. And I spent a lot of my life over in Asia, right? So whether it's Korea, served in Korea, or I lived in Japan for 10 years, or China, and which obviously very different orientation spiritually. And I separate spirituality and religion because religion's the roadmap, spirituality is the destination.
100%.
These people are so amazing. It's interesting when we're all aligned around this concept of a higher purpose, whether it's Taoism or Buddhism or Christianity or Muslim or Hindu or whatever, there's something of common nature that comes because, to your point, they all center around this idea of good and recognizing good in one another. It's such a powerful concept, but to me, it's by serving a purpose that's higher than us, an order that's higher, and acknowledging the universe truly is good, and we're here because of it, right? We're made up of the dust of the stars. I love that principle, and I think, to the point, it connects everything. I don't care if you're Mountain Ops talking about your supplements here at New Skin, when we have our supplements in Pharmanex, it's all for the greater good of what our mission to be a global force for good, empowering people to improve lives. Your mission, empowering families, and to do it's all good. And I look at your book, and I'm like, I'm going through this, and I want to dive into it because I want to know, as you conceived the book and why you did the book. And we'll talk about a couple of the chapters in there. It's a real powerful, but this idea of Conquer Code, and that there is a methodology, or at least a framework for overcoming things. Tell me how this came to be, and what do you expect, or what do you hope to do with this platform now, being an author?
I started writing this. It's interesting because within Mountain Ops, we do our Conquer More Challenge. And so there's every month you have an accountability partner, and you set a goal: spiritual, physical, mental, social, and then a core value right in the middle. It's no different than like in my faith, the youth and children have this program. It's very similar. Jesus Christ, said he increased in wisdom and stature and favor with God and man. It's like those quadrants. That's how we break out our wellness activities at Mountain Ops. And the mental side of it, every time I had an accountability partner for about 5 years, I would tell them, I'm writing in my journal 500 words. They didn't know I was writing a book. I didn't want anyone to know. I'm writing in my journal. So for 5 years, I would write 400 or 500 words.
This is a 5-year journal.
5 years. And then I took a year with editors to go through and make sure I was really, kind of weaving the stories together the right way. And then the last year, it was really a 7-year process. I sat there wondering, what do I do with this? And should I launch it? And I had all sorts of doubts. Should I really do this? I'm kind of exposing my family to the world, this and that. But originally, it was for my wife, my children, and my grandchildren. Here's the experiences in life that have blessed me, that have connected me with the greatest code, the greatest conqueror is Jesus Christ. My conquer code is Jesus Christ. And throughout every page of this book, you'll find the Lord again, and again in my life. And I hope that the reader finds that as well. And so that's why I wrote it. There's a scripture I love. We talk of Christ, we rejoice in Christ, we preach of Christ, and we do that for our children to provide them with a source of strength. So that's what I did. I did that for my children. And then along the way, I was writing this, and I was like, hey, I'm weaving in the stories of this business, and everyone was asking me, tell them your entrepreneurial journey on podcasts, at speaking events, this and that. Why don't you write this into a book? And I'm like, well, I didn't tell them, but I'm kind of working on it, And I didn't tell any of my team until this last January at our team kickoff meeting. I said, if you've been my accountability partner at any time during the last 5-6 years, raise your hand. So all these how many of you did I tell I was writing in a journal and they raised their hands? I was like, I was actually putting the Conquer Code together. This is my book, and it's all about what we've been living here at Mountain Ops, the core values that have guided us towards improving the lives of individuals and families. And the ultimate improvement, in my opinion, is guiding them to that source of strength and that source of power. And so that's what this book is. And so then, it came down to the time where it's like, okay, it's all come together, it's edited. Yeah. And I hadn't told my board at Mountain Ops. We sold the majority of Mountain Ops about 4 years ago. Okay. I actually just stepped away as the CEO. I'm now the chief visionary and founder, representing the business out as kind of an ambassador to it, bringing awareness.
Did you go private equity, or did
we went private equity 4 years ago with a really good firm.
That's great.
And now I just hired a new CEO, and he is incredible. He's a real CEO just like you. I'm a founder CEO, and
you're the smart CEO.
I'm watching him do this stuff, and he's doing incredible things, and now I'm doing my passion. I'm out there like bringing awareness to a brand that is truly changing people's lives, and I get to talk more about this. So at the 10-year anniversary, we launched the book of Mountain Ops, and then I announced like I'm not leaving, but I'm taking a new role. But I've created some succession planning now with this team member. But I remember it came down to where I was like, I don't know what to do with this edited manuscript now. Yeah. I gave it to a few board members, and they just said, Trevor, this will shed some light on what Mountain Ops is all about, our core values, the goodness. And there's not enough good out there in the world. There's so many voices that are negative. So let's get behind you on this, and let's launch this. This will be...
I love it. And I think the thing that this helps me understand better how it came to be, because it's a really powerful book. And like I said, I went through knowing I needed to do it. I was like skimming parts of it, and I was reading parts of it, and I was like, man, I need to go through this now. And I think that's what journals do. And it inspires me too, because I've told this story before, but just so we connect on it. I'm in the process similar to where you are, but I've just refused to acknowledge I'm writing a book. Yeah. But I had this moment a couple of years ago it was about a year ago where I was actually at Two Tiny Tailors getting some pants hemmed. And I'm scrolling through Instagram, and I came across this, the term toxic post. And I read through this guy's post, and I'm reading it, and I'm like, you don't have to go tell your whole life's vision and story on a post and offend half the world and all of that reading it. And it really bothered me. And I got home, it was Saturday afternoon, it was like 5 p.m. I get home, and it sat with me. And I was trying to watch I forget, it was a summer, so maybe it was at Formula One or something. I'm trying to watch something on TV, and it just keeps getting there in my head of like, why does this bother you? When something bothers you, you have to think, why is this bothering me? And what I realized was I've never put myself out there. You know, like that's what he stands for. Yeah. That's not what I stand for. But I've never gone out and actually been willing to put on paper what do I stand for, my core values, my beliefs. And so I get my iPad and I just start typing.
That's awesome.
And I wrote until about 3 a.m., like just typing through. And it started to come into chapters, but they were just principles or values. I go to sleep. I wake up 6 a.m. Sunday morning, I typed all the way through my church stuff. Like, it was just like, I just couldn't stop.
That's awesome.
But what I ended up with, I think it's probably like 90, 100 pages. I don't know. It's just in iPad, was a framing of what do I believe in my life. And the whole point of it was, if I die, I want my kids to know. Yeah. That was it, right? That was it. What you've done is you've taken this same idea and you've built it into literally like a framework of what people need to look at. And then you surround it by, you head it off by a scripture which is foundational to you and your core that frames each one of these things, right? And so and then you built it in a way that I think is also a manual. I think it almost feels like you're taking notes at the end.
I want to give people something to walk away with, like, okay, I'm going to...
Their own journal in a way.
We do this for our community, and we actually sell a Conquer 90 journal that goes along with this, so people can set their goals with the spiritual, these 4 quadrants, right? And being 90 days, I take my 12 core values, and there's one per week. And so we're living in at Mountain Ops. It's now part of the community that we've built, hundreds of thousands of people, and there just wasn't a script to follow. It was just kind of our social media and kind of, here's what we're doing, this and that. But now there's something to to kind of guide us through. And this, for me, a lot of it's a routine and, in my life.
Yeah.
And a lot of it is looking back on our life saying, okay, what were the foundational principles that I was taught?
Yeah.
What are the experiences that I've had? And maybe I let some pass me by without choosing to see them for the perspective I was supposed to gain. And again, I go back to a quote I stated at the very beginning: you're most powerfully positioned to serve the person you once were. So if we can either in the moment or looking back say, I've experienced these things for a reason. There is a wise purpose to this. Now I'm going to put this wise purpose to play. Now we're feeding hungry children and families. And I look at my childhood and my youth and leaders that challenged me to do certain things that 27 years later are still part of my routine. That's part of how, and I'm still facing mountains. And then you get to the top and you see the beauty about that is you see the peaks that are all around you that you got to go climb now again, And so it's this constant challenge of progression and improvement and becoming what God wants us to become,
It's phenomenal. And I feel like there's plagiarism here because we have an MBSB 90-day challenge that we do. Right. I think these are core principles is what we're getting to, right? Is mind, body, spirit, business, and quadrants and all of that. And how do we become better human beings and contribute more? Better means for the people around us. So I know we've kind of gone, but if we could go a little longer, I would love to just ask you two more things. One on the book's title. So take us through phase 1, build the foundation. Phase 2, built for strength and endurance. Phase 3, built for speed. Which this all sounds like, by the way, it's this physical only book, and it's not at all the way it's framed. Built to conquer mountains, built to breathe, built for the hunt, built to conquer more, and then you have an epilogue that the conqueror. So, give us an overview. Just walk us through.
The reason why I built it out in those phases is because during the time of life when I was putting this all together, I was actually training for my first marathon. It was the Moab Trail Marathon. I was not a runner. I had to have some surgery on my knee for years of pain and everything, but I was challenged by a guy in our gym that broke the Guinness World Record for number of pull-ups.
Okay.
And I asked him while he was doing that, tell me, what should I do, man? I need to do something.
He broke
Goggins. Goggins was calling him, and then he broke another. He did 8,100 in the 24-hour period of time. Yeah. And he was an employee of Mountain Ops, Cam Haynes' son, actually. So if you know Cam Haynes. But I was going through this training, and I actually had a really, really good coach that was taking me through these phases of training. And so as I went through these phases of training, I was likening what I was writing. I was like, oh, this is kind of ties in. And there's always there's some analogy between the physical and the spiritual. There's spiritual fitness and there's physical fitness. And I tried to bring that all together through these phases. And it's kind of my life's journey. This isn't like, hey, it started at the beginning of Mountain Ops. I take the reader to my childhood and then I take them through my LDS mission and what that meant. Because I think there's a lot of people out there that misunderstand or don't know or they're curious. And that's some of my board members were like, I just had a daughter go off to Brazil. She's been there for 7 months. And one of the board members had a daughter that left to college. And he's like, I don't get to see her for two weeks. And he's like, when do you get to see yours? I was like, 18 months. He's like, no. Are you serious?
I'll see her when she comes home.
It was kind of one of these things where it was like, Trevor, I'm really curious. And I've had plenty of people like that. I'm really curious about how this all happens, these mission things, and what do you learn and why, and it's this pressure cooker of life where these young people come out having learned so much in 2 years that they might have taken them 20 years. And so I tried to give in a normal and natural way of people a glimpse into what my life's been like, recognizing that they probably have their own beliefs and I revere and reverence and respect all of that. But I will beautifully and as eloquently as possible express mine because it's everything to me. When connection is everything. And success in my life has only come through connection with my family, with my team, and ultimately with God. And so that's what I'm going to write about. I'm not going to skirt around it. I'm going to share openly what I believe, and hopefully it benefits someone. So I take them through my physical training, but I liken those physical aspects to these elements of life that I've built upon with the foundation, and then building for speed and building to be able to breathe after not being able to breathe through these financial difficulties in life, where we were just feeling like, there's that song by Sarah Bareilles, Head Underwater, they tell you to breathe easy for a while. I couldn't breathe easy for a while. I was drowning. It was all consuming. But what carried me through, it was a faith in Jesus Christ. It was opportunities to serve. It was, my family. It was mission. It was all these things. And so I've put that into the book. And then in the end, I sat down in a studio in Austin, Texas to record the audio, and I actually prefer listening to it. I get more out of a book when I'm reading because I can make notes.
For sure,
But I'm an emotional guy. I've got sweaty eyes at times, and it comes through in the audio. I did not want to do that. I didn't want to hear my voice. I didn't like my voice. But I sat down there in the studio, honestly feeling a lot of adversarial effects, some resistance. Like, what are you doing this for, Trevor? Almost sick, like physically. Like, why am I doing this?
What do you think that was?
I think it was the adversary. And this is why I think that, because I was just feeling like, do I think I have something to put out to the world? It's a strange emotion. Do I think I have, like, are people going to think that I think I've got something better?
Doubt. Yeah. Why me? Yeah,
why am I doing this? Who's going to read it?
Yeah.
Who's going to take the time?
Who would even care?
And during one of the breaks, and I was sitting in this recording studio for 16 hours, I went out and I got on the phone with my family. I had 3 hours of recording left. My daughter called in from Brazil. It was her preparation day. And she said, I had the most incredible experience yesterday. She said, I felt like I should get up and say something, and I didn't want to because I didn't know the language and I didn't know this. And I was feeling all these doubts. And then when I actually did it, and I just pushed that aside, this amazing comfort and relief came over me. And she said, Dad, whatever you're experiencing right now, just go and say it. Go do it.
Yeah.
So sorry for the tears, sweaty eyes.
I love it.
I went back in that recording studio for the next 3 hours. I felt like I read better. I was more confident. I was this. And then it ends with a witness from my wife and I together. We conquer together to the world that Jesus Christ is our conquer code. And I believe there's an adversary that would not want that message out there.
For sure.
That would not want us to share a personal experience. That would not want people to understand the foundation that we've built our life upon. And then that relief my daughter talked about, that reassurance that what we shared was right and true, just came over me. And so now it's out there, the recording and the book, and it's been incredible to see the experiences. I got an email from a random missionary that's serving in Brazil this morning, and he said, you don't know me, my mom sent me your book, and he's like, this is helping me approach my faith in a different way, and I'm so excited about my mission because of the stories you shared from yours. And I would have never expected some young man in Brazil is going to read my book that his mom sent him.
No, that's the making of a movement, though. I mean, it truly is a making of the movement. And I think when you talk about I think that's an interesting point about emotions and negative emotions. And you talk about the adversary, which for Christians typically translates to, a dark force, the devil, whatever, Satan, whatever it is. But the principle of God is good, meaning every emotion that's good is of God. It's uplifting. It's taking us somewhere else. And then anything that holds us back is adversarial. To our good. And it's almost like when you feel that stuff, that's where we need to lean in more, right?
100%.
It's where it's like, no, this message, somebody doesn't want it to, or something doesn't want it to get out there because it's good. And we got to push through that. I think if we were oriented that way more societally, politically, business-wise, if we truly lean into what's good, and then whatever's producing bad or negative outcomes, I look at like the political landscape, right? I mean, the negativism is not helping anyone build a better solution. And I think that's the way in our own lives, but I think sometimes we're too hard on ourselves where we listen to that voice that's really trying to bring us down, and that's not good. That's not.
And you could call it resistance as well. Like going from
I love the adversary point. It's adversarial. It's
I handed my baby this business of 10 years over to a new CEO. I was excited. I was at peace with that decision, but then all of a sudden fears creep in, anxieties creep in. I'm watching somebody else make this decision, lead my team, this and that. And I sat down with a mentor and I was like, what am I doing? But I believe in this guy. It has nothing to do with him. I think it's all internal. I'm stuff, all these doubts and everything. And he says, if you're feeling those things, this resistance, this adversarial effect, you're on the right path. Henry B. Eyring said, if you feel like you're walking uphill, you're going the right direction. I read scriptures this morning and yesterday and where I'm at in my study where the mountainous waves were crashing upon a people and it was sinking them. And they were praying to be brought back up. And then the winds never ceased to blow them towards this promised land. So often in life, we feel the waves or the winds or the storms knocking on our doors and we're like, we want to avoid, we want to. But sometimes those moments of resistance or those moments of, man, this is not what I expected, that's when you become acquainted with a power beyond in a different way. That's when the Savior arrives in my life. I look at it, I look at the Savior and I think, okay, he's walking across the water. The apostles were scared. They were like, is this a ghost? And then Peter walks, and it's because they hadn't experienced him that way yet. So there's a little bit of fear. Anytime we haven't experienced something that way in life, there's fear creeps in, resistance, adversary, and we just need to get out of the boat.
That's when you need to lean in.
That's when you need to, you need to lean in.
We're going to lean in and
because
push.
that's probably a sign that you are on the right path. And so I just tried to keep that in my mind. And I learned that from my kids. I learned that from my wife. I learned that from my parents. And I learned that from reading in the scriptures that that's usually what's happening is you're being pushed in the right direction.
Oh, man, I love that.
But it's hard work, right?
It's hard work. It's hard work. And by the way, Trevor, there's something at the end here. And I wanted to ask you, so my reading was, like, where did this come from? And then I just love them. But you have a list of, and I'm a huge quote guy, right? I have notes and notes and notes of quotes from all different types of books. But you have a set of phrases here. I am part of the cause of conquerors. The die has been cast. I've stepped over the line. The decision's been made. I'm built to conquer. I won't look back. Let up. Slow down. These are all personal mantras, I guess, or things you've come up with. But
I didn't come
where
up
did
with
they
these.
come from?
I can't take credit for
this. You gathered these.
This is actually this has been written in multiple different ways.
Okay.
And it's by an author that's unknown. So people have taken it and they've adapted it to their own.
Okay.
The original is the cause of Christ. I am part of the cause of Christ.
Okay.
The die has been cast. I've stepped over the line. It's all about Jesus Christ. And it was read at my father's funeral by one of my brothers. And when I listened to this, and then I read it after, and a friend of mine printed it out and brought it to my house, so I have it framed. And I was looking at, presenting to my team, what does it mean to be a conqueror? And I thought about my dad, and I thought about Jesus Christ, and I thought about this quote, and I looked, can I adjust this? But it was an unknown, and I found it in so many different written ways that I thought I'm just going to add the cause of the conquerors.
Okay.
But it all comes down to,
I love
then
it.
after that, the conquer code is him.
I haven't read it before, so I was just like, I got to ask him about it.
I've seen it in a few different places. So. I wish it was mine, but no, I'm.
So I'll scratch your name back out of unknown author unknown. You did quote it there. I had to ask you about it. Yeah. Well, Trevor, honestly, this has been really insightful. I love how your life story has shaped up. I love that New Skin was a part of it and has been and continues to be a part of your mission.
So.
And I love that we're building a better universe with more good, and that we just continue to connect this way. And so just applaud you and appreciate you, acknowledge you for everything you're doing in your life, building these platforms. I'm excited to see what you do with Conquer Code. This is a next step and a next platform. It frees you up from being able to transition your business and now do the next thing. And by the way, I loved watching your workouts on social media. I love watching your family events. You're an all-around good dude. So thanks for being here. Thanks for being a part of our podcast. And just thanks for doing good.
Privilege.
Okay. Thanks, everybody.